Mainstream media reporting on the airstrikes that killed that Iranian general they call the Shadow Commander. Brent Bozell, Media Research Center president, is with us now. OK, you cover this stuff. This is what you do. Tell us, what's the media saying about this guy, al-Soleimani's death?
You know, I think it's interesting because this is a snapshot into the soul of the media themselves. What you're seeing across the board is a truncated Trump did the right thing, but America did the right thing, but he was a terrible person, but they can't unequivocally, the media refused to award the United States the moral high ground in this existential fight between good and evil, this existential fight between those who believe in freedom and those who believe in terrorism. They just simply can't do it. And this, by the way, is not a new phenomena. Remember, go back to 9/11 and the Reuters report where they said that they were going to not use the term terrorist because they said one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So this goes back to that point. The whole world, those who believe in freedom are rejoicing. America is wrapping its arms around Donald Trump. They are cheering in Baghdad. And yet in the United States, there is this sober reflection as to whether or not we did the right thing.
Now, Brent, I know you've seen it, but for the benefit of our viewers who have not seen this, I want to roll some tape and show some headlines of the media's coverage thus far of the killing. So roll that tape, please.
Millions of people in Iran and in Syria and in Lebanon and in Israel are waking up this morning very, very scared in a region that seems to be one step closer to another war.
This strike is fairly brazen, fairly audacious to a certain degree.
Right decision, wrong commander-in-chief.
I am deeply worried that he did not incorporate intelligence into planning this attack and thinking about the repercussions.
The president, with his flag tweet, has certainly made this a U.S. versus Iran event. Grave concerns that there is no plan, that there's no policy, that this is another one-off act.
Wait a second, Brent. Did I hear that right? Right decision, wrong commander-in-chief? Did I hear that right? Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's precisely the case. And this, by the way, is the commander-in-chief who has been so restrained, and in some people's views, too restrained in his reaction to terrorism since he's been in office. This is not a flame-throwing, hand grenade tossing crazy president we have. We have a very sober, thoughtful president. This is something that was planned, that was considered, that was debated, and was agreed upon. And the flames were still floundering in that car. They were still ablaze, and already CNN was finding fault with Donald Trump. It's just it's the stunning phenomenon.
Well, it's continual, isn't it?
I've said it before. I've said it before, Stuart. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I've said it before on your show. There's not a thing Donald Trump will ever do for which he will be commended for by the national media. And you just saw him take out one of the most vicious, horrific men on the planet Earth who's got the blood of hundreds of Americans on his hands, and they still can't unequivocally give this president, this commander-in-chief, the credit for putting an end to this man.
Now look at this. This is a headline from the Washington Post, and it reads as follows. Breaking news. Airstrike at Baghdad airport kills Iran's most revered military leader, Qasem Soleimani. Most revered military leader. I find that extraordinary because the Washington Post has no problem calling our president a racist, bigot, and a liar. But he, the terrorist, is a revered military leader. Astonishing, frankly.
Again, speaking to those hundreds of people who've lost their lives, talk to their wives, talk to their fathers, their mothers, their brothers, their sisters, their children. Ask them what they think of this man who killed. Ask them if they think he's a revered religious leader. But this is not the first time that the Washington Post has done this. Remember when al-Baghdadi was taken out, how they wrote their headline. They called him an austere religious scholar. And then they also called him a conservative academic. And this guy was the founder of ISIS, responsible for the death of hundreds of thousands of people. Yet he was an austere religious scholar.
I keep asking this question of media people. Will this change? How can this go on? I mean, I simply can't believe that America's mainstream media is so overwhelmingly critical of our president to the point where they'll call him names but call a terrorist a revered military leader. I can't believe this goes on.
Yeah, no, you know, it's one thing to talk about how they won't give Donald Trump credit for the economy, which they won't, and how they attack him on impeachment, which they have. But it's quite another when you're talking about the existential war that is going on now between radical terroristic Islam and the West, for them not to be able to take the unequivocal position that we are the force of good and the West is the force of good against the forces of evil. They can't take that position. And that's a snapshot, Stuart, into the soul of the press. And it's a dark soul.
You know, in the past, we've often cut you short. I've given you at least a minute or two less than I wanted to give you. Today, we'll let you run, and I'm real happy about it, because what you had to say was just right on, son, right on. Thank you very much for joining us, Brent Bozell.
Thank you, Stuart. Thanks
Sure
for having
thing.
me.